Simbarashe Chigwanda is an IT auditor with 7 years of experience across 2 Big Four accounting firms, where he focuses on improving business processes through information systems audits. Outside of work, he is a proud husband and father of 2 who enjoys sports, exercise, and the outdoors.
The way I look at mentorship is it's something I needed. It's something that I wish I'd had because who knows, I might not have spent 7 years in the wilderness. I feel like you have to want to give back.
Having benefited from mentors who supported him through a challenging journey, Simbarashe is passionate about giving back through Daraja. He hopes to pay that support forward by mentoring and encouraging others as they pursue their own paths.
Welcome to the Daraja Impact Stories, a platform where we capture testimonials from real people, hearing real stories, and highlighting real impact in our community. Today I'm joined by Simbarashe Chigwanda, who is a Daraja mentor, a Big Four employee, a Big Four accounting firm employee, working at EY and in the ITGC space. So we'll hear more about that as we get into this conversation. Simba, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming through. So Simba, I think a good starting point for us is always around your background, where you were born, and leading to you sitting here in Brisbane as a Daraja mentor and all that jazz. So if you want to walk us through your journey,
Okay.
and then we understand from yourself, yeah.
Yeah, sure thing. I try not to take the scenic route. My wife has a tendency of letting me know that I like to take the scenic route to things, but essentially born and raised in Zimbabwe. I left Zimbabwe when I was 18 and I moved to South Africa. I moved to Monash University and I did my bachelor's in economics and marketing. So that was my passion from university. I think from A level, I went from the minute I literally got introduced to the subject called economics, I fell in love. So when I was going through my A levels, in my head, I always thought I was going to be an economist.
Right.
But life is funny; it takes you completely different directions.
You pivoted.
Yeah, I pivoted and I had to adjust, and that's probably one of the biggest lessons I learned because I had to adjust my sales to fit the environment that I was in. So how it went for me was I finished my degree when I was like 22. But South Africa doesn't necessarily give a specific pathway into employment. It's really dependent on what you studied.
For migrants, you mean?
Yes, for migrants, yes. And it's really depending on what you studied, I guess. When I took up economics, I took it up as a passion. I was fortunate enough to have a father who said to me, look, you study what you want, not what I want you to study.
Powerful.
So he gave me that option and I studied economics. But probably why I needed a mentor as well is it didn't click to my head that I needed to study something that would actually get me employed after I finished my qualifications. And because I didn't have that, when I finished my degree, I was unable to actually get a work permit because economics was not on the skills occupation list or the equivalent of that for South Africa. So the result was I spent, I think from 22 till I was about 29.
Right.
A good 7 years in which I added on to my qualifications because then, I went to do my honors in business management with UNISA. I did it over distance learning. Then after that, I went to do a postgraduate diploma in business administration. But all of these things, I was really doing them to try and find a way to stay in South Africa. So the idea was to get a study permit to stay in South Africa because going back to Zimbabwe was a non-starter. The economy didn't allow me to get a job in the field that I was interested in.
Okay.
And at the time as well, I was working as an events coordinator. I absolutely hated that job, but that job actually taught me things that in hindsight.
Like what?
communication for starters. I worked at a place where, depending on the event we were hosting, I had to either relate to a 5-year-old grade 1 student, to a student doing matric who's 17, to a CEO who came to do team building at the...
So it was an events
It
place?
was an events place.
Yeah,
And because with the events, communication is a big factor.
100%.
I found myself in a space where I was having to communicate with different people of different ages, of different races, of different backgrounds. And in each scenario, I always had to find something that was common to make the communication flow.
So stakeholder engagement became a skill for you.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I did that for 7 years. I saw zero value in it. I thought I was wasting my time here. But I didn't know that I was actually learning something that would become useful for me
Yeah.
later on in life.
Yeah.
So I guess when I got to 29, my parents came up with a plan and they said, okay, look, you're living in South Africa. Yes, you've got all this education behind you, but it's not really giving you a sustainable career. I think the key word there was something sustainable. You know, I was running my own little business where I was taking advantage of, you know, the price differences. Arbitrage, yeah. Basically, like, you buy something in South Africa, you sell it off in Zimbabwe for US dollars, you take advantage of the currency there. And it wasn't sustainable for me to actually continue to do that for the rest of my life. So, coming to Australia at 29 was essentially pressing a reset button. I came here. Initially, when the plan to come to Australia was formed, the idea was I was going to go and do a Bachelor of Nursing.
Also driven by immigration reasons, right? To say, I want to stay in Australia, therefore this is what they need there, but I don't want to be a nurse.
Yeah, but I didn't want to be a nurse. I think what worked for me was I applied through McPherson Consulting Education Services.
In Harare,
And the lady I talked to there, she told me I had an easier chance of actually getting a visa if I continued along the path of what I had studied. And because I had studied business, she told me I was better off doing a master's in something that is business related.
Okay.
So based on that, I applied to Griffith Business School. I got a partial scholarship to do a master's.
I didn't know this, but you got a partial scholarship.
Yeah. It was based on my academic results from all my previous qualifications. I wasn't even expecting the scholarship myself.
Yeah.
Like, I applied for a uni place. I applied for a visa. And then, you know, when my visa came out, I come to uni. I didn't actually find out about this actual scholarship until I actually landed in Australia, and I'm at Griffith and I'm doing my enrolling. And they tell me, oh, look, you've got a partial scholarship. And I asked them, what is this partial scholarship based on? Because I didn't actually apply for this. And they said, no, look, somebody looked at your academic results and they thought,
brilliant,
this guy's brilliant, let's give him a scholarship.
Wow, well done.
So they gave me a partial scholarship. And I studied a master's in information systems and a master's in supply chain management. And I guess somewhat motivated by that scholarship, in my head I said, okay, look, I want to keep a very high GPA. I want to make sure.
So results were important to you.
Very much so.
At that point.
And it played out well for me because towards the end of my studies, I think literally in my final semester, my lecturer just randomly came up to me and he said to me, look, we're looking for somebody who can do an internship in supply chain management. Your options are you go do a 10-week internship and we give you 20 credit points, which is the equivalent of 2 modules. Or you study here, you do
2 courses.
2 courses. So based on my experience in South Africa as well, and probably something I forgot to mention, when I was landing in South Africa, when I was landing in Australia, I remember saying, it was a little prayer, and I literally said to myself, this time I'm going to do things different.
Different to what you had done in
South Africa. What I had done in South Africa. The 7 years I was in South Africa, I had a routine. Besides working, every day I woke up to send resumes. I never put my foot out there. I never actually went to meet people. It was just about, oh, look at a job ad that's
depending on the internet.
Yeah, depending on the internet, just send your resume out there and hope somebody sees the value in your resume. But a paper can only speak so much for you.
Yeah.
So when I was coming here, I said, look, I wanted to do things differently.
I'll pause you there, Simba. So what I'm hearing is your journey in South Africa, there was no mentor involved in all that. Basically. It was just you actually going through what you had, the tools that you had in front of you, including the internet, and you were applying for all these roles and stuff like that without actually that guidance from someone who had walked that path before.
Pretty much. And I guess maybe to give it a clearer picture, my father was a trained civil engineer. My younger brother is a civil engineer. When my younger brother finished uni, he packed up his stuff. After living with me for about a year, he packed up his stuff and he moved to Doha, to the Middle East, where my dad was. My dad was in a position to actually guide him because he could use his own contacts.
Right.
I had attempted the same thing a few years ago.
Engineering.
And my dad literally has said to me, you studied economics, you studied business. I'm an engineer. I have zero contacts in the business world. I can't actually help you even if you come here. So, that lack of mentorship, I did not study anything that would actually put me on the map to get employed. My father didn't have the resources to guide me because he didn't
understand in that field.
Yeah, he was not in the field that I studied. So I kind of had to try and figure things out on my own. So fast forward 2019, I landed the shores of Australia. I'm here and I said, okay, I want to do things differently. So my approach to things was very different. I mean, I think in my first weeks of actually landing in Australia, I reached out to people that I'd gone to school with, contacts I had, and I think you were the first person to actually respond.
Yes.
And when you responded, something I'm forever grateful for, and I'm not sure if I even told you this, but my first weekend you walked with me all over Brisbane. We were dropping my resume everywhere, and we were trying to get me a part-time job. Those things kind of molded me because it put me in a position where I was being proactive about everything. It was, okay, the internet isn't working for me, so I've got to be there.
What other means or tools?
What else is basically what else can I do that is not
just
sending my CV and hoping for the best?
Yeah.
And so walked into rooms, dropped my resume in person, met people in person. I was terrible at it. But
it was a start.
Yeah. But I think the key important thing for me there is I wasn't afraid to fail. And and I just needed to do it. I just needed to do it. And then fast forward maybe a year and a half down the line, I'm close to completing my master's. I think that's about the time you were leaving to go to
went to London,
to London for a bit. You invited me to your farewell party, right? And you put me in a room full of people who could actually help me. At the end of that, you asked me whose contact I had. I had zero contacts. And you had a go at me.
I remember that.
And, it stuck in my head. I didn't appreciate it then. To be honest,
I can be very...
I was just like, man, this guy, man. Like,
we are just the same. For the benefit of the viewer, we went to the same high school. So Simba is a friend from high school. Simba moves to Australia. I hope him drop some resumes in person, like what he just said. And then I'm about to move to London for a 2-year, stint in England. Organized a farewell. It was a farewell drinks and dinner, whatever that we had in the city. And after that, I said, Simba, how many contacts did you get from today? Because there were executive managers there. There were people with enough authority to actually help Simba's situation. And then, obviously, Simba didn't appreciate me being very direct, but later on, you can continue that.
So later on, I guess because of the conversation we had, I signed up to Griffith University Industry Mentoring Program, and I was assigned a mentor. His name is Peter Johnson. I'll never forget that man.
From uni?
Yeah, I've probably lost touch with him. I have no idea if he still knows who I am.
Yeah.
But that man, he put me in a room as part of his mentorship. He put me in a room with some of his colleagues. I remember I spent 30 minutes talking to someone, and then at the end of that conversation, that person walked away. And the first thing Peter Johnson asked me, what's that man's
Name.
contact?
Oh, yeah.
What's his, I knew his name from having a conversation. He was like, okay, do you have his contact? Do you have his email address? Do you have his LinkedIn profile?
So same sort of advice that I had.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And so when that happened, I remember I stood up, wanting to go contact the man, and Peter dragged me down. He said, sit down.
Too late.
It's too late. The opportunity is gone. And so at the time, that's when I started thinking, wait a minute. Koda's put me through this. Peter's putting me through this. There's clearly something I need to be doing here.
There's a gap there.
There's a gap there. And then taking some of the lessons I learned from Griffith Industry Mentoring Program, I started randomly sending messages to people on LinkedIn. And what I did is I looked for people who'd gone to the same university as me. I looked for people who had the job title that I wanted.
Yeah.
And with each of these people, I would send them a message on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has this feature that says add a note as well. When you're sending a person to somebody who you've never
met,
who
you don't know, you're not acquainted. Yeah.
And I think it gave me, maybe 140 characters or something like that, to literally have to say something in those characters to make somebody actually want to talk to you.
Enough to capture that attention. Yeah.
That's when I learned the concept of an elevator pitch.
Right.
I'm like, okay, what can I say that's going to get somebody to say, okay, look, you know what?
Let me respond to this.
Let me respond to this young man. I'll give him 30 minutes of my time to have a coffee.
Yeah.
Or I'll give him 30 minutes of my time to have a drink or something like that.
Yeah.
And I guess it was another lesson for me. Because I found that I don't do that. I don't know whether to say it's a bad habit or not, but I do that sometimes now. If somebody randomly sends me a LinkedIn connection request and there is no note, I don't respond.
Okay.
Because I say to myself, well, you want to connect with me, but why do you want to connect with me?
The why.
Because it's what I had to tell people who I was reaching to, why I wanted to connect with them.
Yeah. So it's a method that you use personally.
Yeah.
And you expect people to do the same.
To do the same.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, I started reaching out to these people, and some of them would respond, some of them would not.
Yeah.
I got into rooms where I was networking. Sometimes I completely bombed, went into a room and left maybe with one number or left with 0 numbers.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would go in and it would just be my day, and I would come out with 10 different contacts.
It has to be natural as well, I think, for me. I think the takeaway there is, yes, it can, it has to, you kind of have to sense the vibe as well, because you don't want to be overwhelming. Just say, you kind of have to read the room as well and understand, okay, this is the environment that I'm in. How do I navigate through this? And that comes through mentorship as well, that guidance.
Mentorship and networking.
Yeah.
And I guess the other thing I said earlier, don't be afraid to fail. Even if I bombed in that room, the next networking event, I put myself in that room.
You got bigger and better.
Saying, okay, look, I know the mistake I made last time. I'm not going to do the same thing this time.
Yeah.
And it opened up doors for me. But I guess my story's gone around a bit, but if we go back to this time when I finished uni now, because of these efforts, these subtle things that I've been doing here and there, my lecturer organized a 10-week internship for me at a timber distribution company.
Right.
This internship had more to do with supply chain management than it had to do with information systems.
Right.
But I took it anyway.
Which is the other part of your degree anyway.
Yes,
right?
it was already the other part of my degree. So I went in there. I think on the first week they told me, okay, this is what we need you to do, A, B, C, D. And once I understood what my mandate was, I would leave work, I would go back home. In between my work shifts, I'll put in the extra effort.
Yeah.
Suffice to say, 10 weeks worth of work, I completed that in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And my boss was super impressed.
Yeah.
And the next thing he said to me is like, look, you're supposed to be here for 10 weeks. You finished what we needed you to do in 6 weeks. So we've got 4 weeks to kill. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got this project that we're doing. They were actually doing a transformation project because they were removing one ERP and moving into NetSuite.
Okay.
And the ERP they were moving into was something they were moving from one that was obsolete into one that was, I guess, more modern.
Okay.
and they asked me to do the groundwork on that.
Okay.
So I started sitting down with every single person who was working there, understanding what their role was, and drawing process maps using Microsoft Visio.
Visio, yeah. I remember working with you at PwC, and I had to use Visio at some point, and you actually helped me with that. So that's where you got that stuff.
That's where I got that. You know, designing process maps, understanding how things work.
Yeah.
Because this was the foundation of what the people at NetSuite needed to be able to build a system that was suitable for the company that I was working for.
Right.
So that was my first exposure into the IT space as well. And then there's a guy I lived with. I'm forever grateful to him, a Nigerian guy.
It's a good friend of ours, yes.
Good friend of ours.
Ade.
Ade introduced me to a lady who worked at PwC. And this lady at PwC, she said to Ade, when they were having conversation, she just said to him, she's like, look, if this guy is serious, he is not going to send me his resume. He's going to come and see me in person.
Yeah.
And as painful as it was, I gave up a shift because I was a casual employee, so I got paid by the day.
Yeah.
So if I didn't turn up to work,
there's no pay for that day. Yeah.
And I had bills. So that one day I called in sick. I went in, I saw this lady, and that lady, after I guess about 30 minutes or so, she's like, okay, look, you know what? I like you as a person. I get a certain vibe from you. I'm now willing for you to send me your resume.
Okay. So she made you come to see you first to make that first initial assessment, and then from there she allows you to then send your CV. Let's progress from there.
Which was another thing different from what I had done before. I used to send resumes without talking to people.
Broadcasted,
Now the situation was reversed. If I'm going to send somebody a resume, I've got to have talked to you first. I've got to have shown you who I am and what I can bring to the table. And it's literally the approach I've been using ever since.
Yeah.
So I sent her my resume, she opened up a few doors for me, and I found myself in a situation where I'm working at this supply chain management company. Like I'm doing my supply chain role, is working well for me.
Yeah.
But then an opportunity has opened up for me, and it's in the Big Four.
Right, Big Four firm. Now that's PwC you first joined,
Yeah. And in my dream, I always wanted to work with a multinational company. So I said to myself, well,
this is a manna from heaven.
This is it for me.
Yeah.
So I joined PwC in 2019. I was older than anybody else in my cohort.
Yeah.
I had to literally start from the bottom.
Yeah.
I was a lateral hire, but I didn't have relevant experience for the particular role that I was doing.
Right.
So it put me in a position where I actually had to start from the bottom, and that's when I started to learn what ITGCs are.
And they train you
what IT audit was.
Yeah.
And they trained me in that role. And I guess where I am now, I can say I'm an assistant manager.
Well done.
I think I can call myself an experienced IT auditor.
Yeah.
I now work for Ernst & Young,
but
I have got about 7 years experience now, having worked for PwC and Ernst & Young. And
EY. Yeah.
And in those companies, I was doing different roles as well. Because with PwC, I looked at IT audit from an internal audit perspective. I never really understood how it impacted the financial statements.
Right.
When I moved to EY, I was now doing the same role, but in a financial statement space.
So from an external audit
point of view now, because it's now like, okay, how can we support that the systems that are processing these financial transactions are actually reliable? And at the end of the day, that's essentially what ITGCs is.
Right. Can you walk us through, so for those people who don't know the acronym ITGC, what does that mean? I know about that because obviously I work in risk, but for people who don't know about controls and governance and all that, what are ITGCs?
So the term ITGC itself stands for IT General Controls.
Information
Technology General Controls. Essentially what we look at is how people access systems and how people implement the change management of those systems. So when you say change management, it's like when they're upgrading softwares or when they're changing things, what processes do they follow? If we're looking at it from an internal audit perspective, we sometimes look at their operations as well.
Yeah.
And when I started, we also used to look at software development. But nowadays, because almost everything is software as a service, the development part of the testing has sort of kind of dropped out of things. It's you now look at access, change, and operations.
Okay.
And with internal audit, everything was important. When I moved into external audit, I understood that only access and change was really important.
Yeah.
Operations is only really is only really important if you have two systems that are processing financial transactions that are actually talking to each other. But for the most part, we just really look at access and change. So when we look at access, we're looking at how do people set their passwords?
Yeah.
How are people added into the system?
Right.
Like when they need access to the system, we're looking at how do reviews of people who have access to that system, like how are those reviews conducted? And then when we look at change management, for example, we're looking at, okay, you've got a new software here. Have you tested it? Do you have the results of when you tested it? And is there segregation of duties when you are...
The right controls in place.
Basically, we're looking at the controls that you have when you are implementing a new system, or when you're upgrading your system, or that type of thing. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to conclude on is, if you have an ERP that's operating and it's processing financial transactions, is it reliable?
Okay.
Because that is the question at the end of the day that we're trying to answer.
Reliability.
Yes.
Simba, I'll take you back to the topic of the day, the larger impact hub and mentorship. Your journey is powerful. What you've done, you've narrated a very powerful story there, and what you're doing today, leading to this moment as well, where we pivot into mentorship.
Yeah.
So you joined the Raja. Obviously, you're busy with what you explained. You're a busy man. Where do you find the time to give back? Because that's the pushback we get from many mentors or would-be mentors out there to say, I don't have time. I've got you yourself. You have a 1-year-old, my goddaughter, baby Easy. You've got a wife. You've got a 9 to 5. You've got other things socially and all that stuff, but you still find time to give back. What would you say to some mentors or would-be mentors out there in terms of balancing that time and finding that time and the value you get from a program like the Raja?
I think first and foremost, you have to want to give back.
That's the hard part.
For me, when I joined PwC, the woman I'm telling you about, the promise I made to her, because this woman, when she stuck around PwC to help me get a job. After I got a job, 1 month later she resigned.
She left.
She actually, and I remember the promise I made to her was like, whatever I do, I'm going to pay this forward.
Yeah.
Because the way sometimes Big Four firms work is that if you refer someone, you get a bonus.
Right.
She forgot her. She
didn't
get a bonus because she needed to wait until I completed probation for her to actually get that bonus.
Okay.
She gave up that bonus.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, look, you're giving up your bonus and all of this. For me, the way I repay you is I pay it forward
to someone who needs the same sort of
so anytime somebody comes to me and they've got a resume or they need guidance or they need something, if I'm in a position where I feel like I can actually help, I will do it.
Yeah.
I'll put my hand up and I will do it. And because I think the way I look at mentorship is it's something I needed. It's something that I wish I'd had because who knows, I might not have spent 7 years in the wilderness. So I feel like you have to want to give back. First and foremost.
Okay.
And when I look at mentorship, I look at it as passing the baton. Like, I've learned something. If I can teach you something and it helps you skip the pitfalls that I had to go through, I think I've done.
You've done your bit. We make your journey shorter than what it was for me. So that's exactly why we exist.